little tired. I am Robert DeJesus. I am the artist of Lindsay, the mascot for Ohayocon. And I do a lot of random stuff. Not really. I don't have like a series or a comic I can promote.
You're
But
kind of
if
like
you want-
you're kind of like a wandering samurai of art kind
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
You just do stuff randomly.
And in order for me to do the projects that I want to do, like animations, I found that if I did anime portraits of people for a charge, that sort of took off, and that's the way I kind of like fund my other projects. And that's not the thing I want to be known for, but that became the thing I'm known for now, because it became kind of viral on Reddit and Board Panda and some of these other news outlets, and now.
People are astonished at the idea that somebody could draw characters that look like real people in an anime style.
Yeah.
It's like it freaked people out or something.
Mhm.
So.
And so now people come to the galleries wanting to see portraits, and I want to show them animations, and like every time I show animations, they're like, I want to see more portraits. I'm like,
No, this is the stuff I really want to do. It's like, we don't care what you want to do. We're here to see that crap that you don't like to do. You know, that's another part of being a creator. You know, we all get that.
You can't control what other people want from you.
Yeah. Well, anyway, my name is Fred Gallagher. I've been doing a webcomic called Mega Tokyo for about 20 years now. My God, it has been almost 20 years in August. And I started doing the comic because drawing was a creative outlet, and at the time, I had a friend who was like, "Dude, you got to do a webcomic with me." I was like, "Okay, sure." And then he just harassed me enough to the point it's like, "Fine, I'll do a friggin' comic with you." So I did a couple of pages, and well, we got linked by Penny Arcade and some other things. The next thing I know, I had to start doing them, and I've been doing them ever since. And it was at a time when they were considering comics back 20 years ago, or it's like if you did webcomics, they were supposed to be funny every time, and I started doing some more story and drama-y stuff, and that started to confuse people. This was pretty much in the barbarian age, I think, back, the idea that comics had to be funny. But that's what I've been doing. I've been lucky enough to, I think, when anime and manga started to get really popular, and people were eager for manga to read, and the publishers had not released really all that much stuff. I mean, people were reading Mars, for God's sakes, and some other stuff. And so what they were doing is they were going online looking for more comics to read, more manga to read, and what they were finding was people like myself who were trying to make mangas in an early age. Today, of course, doing this kind of work, you're competing with, not only is a lot of stuff available officially and easy to find, there's libraries of manga that you can read, but you are also competing against the free scanlation stuff, where you're basically competing against the professionals. So as a webcomic artist, as a creator, you really are competing with the people that are doing this stuff professionally as well. So
and teams
and I guess our job is to try to encourage people not to be discouraged by this, although really we're trying to discourage you from it. So I guess, do you want to just sort of start with it's kind of a question, it's a roundtable, so we can ask if you guys have some questions or some clarifications, or you want to leave the room real quickly, go ahead. So go ahead, we got any questions to start with? Yes, sir.
So I guess the issue I have is I'm considering trying to sell a convention, but a lot of my friends tell me I should.
To what? To start a convention?
To sell at conventions.
Sell at conventions. Okay.
But my issue is I feel like my portfolio is not large enough. Aside from just straight up drop more, what recommendations would you have for like diversifying portfolio?
Okay. So what you're curious about is that you'd like to know about the idea of you're being encouraged to get an artist alley table or something similar at a convention and put up your works to sell. The recommendation would be it is definitely worth trying to do, and to see if, there's a lot of people who do it, and as far as what you would sell, it's not too hard to get prints made for things. If you're selling original art, you don't have to have a ton. If you feel like you're gonna, somebody who has, 50 or 60 illustrations of something that nobody's interested in, doesn't sell anything, and then you get somebody who's got 3 or 4 really lovely illustrations, and somebody buys all 5 of them, people buy all 5 of them, that person has done better than the person who has a lot. So you don't really know how well some of your work may be doing. You may go just to sell one piece. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The only difference is you got to take into account how much are you paying for the artist alley? How much are you coming to the convention anyway? So I mean, there's costs involved and stuff like that, but as far as exposure goes, there's nothing wrong with exposure. And as people are going by, they're going to be looking at your work, and it's another type of exposure that you can get being in an artist alley. And I know you've got the big assemblies, where they build the racks that go up to the ceiling and they're covered with artwork and stuff like that. But if it's amazing how people can pick out things they like, and you might find that somebody might pick out your style and say, oh, that's pretty cool. There's a couple in the artist alley for myself that I thought were really interesting when I was walking by, and there's a lot of noise that you're looking through, but people are pretty good at picking out the things they like. So,
and just do it. Just try one locally. Don't go to any big con far away. Try a small local one at first. And,
go to one you're comfortable at. You go to a convention you're comfortable at. Sometimes it's hard to get a table because there's lots of people would like to get tables, so it's a lottery. So you might not even get in the first time. So because one of the things one of the things I see with creators an awful lot is, especially people who are just starting, is I'm not good enough yet. I haven't produced enough work yet. I've still got to get better. I haven't finished all of the thinking and planning. There are people who've been doing that for 20 years and have never been able to produce anything. And the thing is that when it comes to artwork, especially with comics or artwork or anything like that, if you start making work, all you're doing is starting to build a portfolio, starting to build a backlog, starting to build other works. So when you finally make some stuff that catch people's attention, and they come to your site or they come to wherever your table or whatever, they also get to see all the other stuff you've done as well. So one of the things about artists in general is that usually they get better over time. So it's good practice, and there's nothing better than that sort of practice to try to get up there. So I would encourage you to do it, honestly. I think, don't worry about if you have too much or not enough. Look at what other creators are doing at their artist alley tables and think about what you can do. You don't have to do the big stuff. I wouldn't worry about making a lot of money. You're there to talk to people and to react to people and get some input and show your stuff. And I think that's always a good thing. And also make sure you know where the exits are, so if you need to run and hide because you can't take it, it's okay. And if you don't have a lot of stuff, you can fold it all up, walk out the door, not come back, and they won't mind. Really, it's okay. You don't have to stay to the end. So, okay, sure. Any other questions?
Okay, I guess that's.
All right, well, good. Thank you. Oh, okay. What?
Because I know you can. How about you compare and contrast and pros and cons of the original old days when you had to convince a publisher to take your work, to the middle days when you could do it on the web, but you had to set up your own space and create it yourself, to the current day where it's all social media based with DeviantArt and Tumblr and that sort of thing.
Okay. Well, one big thing is that these days it's actually a lot easier to be able to bring in income or to earn money from your artwork than it was when I started. Back when I started, the idea was if you wanted to publish something or get anything printed. Okay, star of the show is here, so I'll shut up now.
Sorry.
Okay, now we can be entertaining. We won't lose people now. This is great. Well, I have a Twitch stream, okay, and on my Twitch stream I have a little sub window that I call Kufu Cam, which it's for my cat, okay? And I happen to know that more people are interested in watching the cat sleep than me. And one day I started this, pets for, what was it, Pets for Bits. So if somebody sent me some bits, I'd give them a pet. Somebody sent me $40 worth of bits, and I had to pet him for a half hour. It was awesome. So.
And did he get frustrated halfway through the pets?
Oh, he was happy. Oh. He's about as chill a cat as can be. But anyway,
I like how you have sometimes a little Nendroid character in the corner.
Oh, well, yeah, well, that's on my table. I have my desk, and then I don't actually put my face on there because I don't really think people. Because my problem is I'm older. and I have like balding stuff going on up here, and when you're leaning down drawing on something, people are getting the view of the top of your head. You know, marketing's important. You got to take these things into consideration. But I put like anime character and androids and other stuff, and I sort of set up my deck and put the camera on that when the cat isn't around. So anyway, I'll go ahead and answer. I'll get back to yours, Ray. What was it?
What's your Twitch user?
It is Fredrin, Fredrin, and I'm actually living to it right now just for fun. So I hope you guys don't mind. They got to give them something to watch every once in a while. So, but yeah, and I've been doing this. I've been doing the online. Here's one thing too. When you talk about sharing, one thing a lot of artists tend to be, or a lot of creators. I'm talking from art because we're kind of artists, the two of us. So it's usually. But I think this goes from music, writing, anything. You have a tendency to feel like when you create stuff, you got to keep it close to your chest. You don't want people to see it. I actually work on everything I do live so people can see me do it. And that's because I like company while I'm working. Now, not everybody likes that. I'm actually very comfortable with it because it actually encourages me to work. And it's kind of nice to see people's reactions to stuff as you're working on stuff. And a lot of people feel like I can't share this because somebody might steal it, or I might lose this idea. No, don't worry about that stuff. Just be open about sharing your work, and also don't, the trouble with sharing your work, anybody know what the real main reason that people don't like to share their work is? Why do people draw with crayons and their kids, they draw all the time? Thomas was doing artwork earlier, for instance. But then at a certain age, most people stop drawing. Why is that?
They find interest in something else?
Well, it's not so much that, but art is a reflection of yourself, and it's another way people can get at you. It's another way that people can pick on you. So a lot of times people will, hey, I'm trying to protect myself as I'm maturing here, and they put that artwork stuff away because it's just something else for people to pick on. So, and that's just kind of a shame. So you have to develop a little bit of a thick skin to a certain extent. You don't have to worry about it too much, but don't be discouraged if you get, because, I mean, you guys do know that there are people out there who are not nice, right? There are people on the internet who are jerks. Okay. Good. Okay, you're a step ahead of it. So understanding that there are people who actually, they enjoy tearing people who are creative down. That's like my kind of theory about the world in general is that I think there's kind of like people that come into, everybody wants to affect other people in a certain way, right? When you create stuff, you want to have a positive impact on people. You want people to react to what you're doing, right? Well, trolls, they're not creating anything. They're trying to get an impact out of other people by tearing stuff down. So I kind of view people trying to create stuff as kind of the more positive force of things, because at least we're trying to affect people in a positive way. So that, of course, makes us targets for the other type. So, okay. Anything to add, Bob?
About the trolls, if I get them, I kind of feel sorry for them because this is all they have in their life. It's like they got nothing better to do than just, wreak havoc on someone else's, spotlight.
Yeah. And you're just sitting there.
Don't take it personally. They're projecting. They have their own problems, and they can't hold it in themselves, so they got to throw it on someone else.
Right. And you kind of do a little bit of that thing where it is like, I mean, it's like some of these people who like attack you. Sometimes they're like 13 or 14 years old, and I've been doing this for 20 years, kid. I've been doing this for longer than you've been around. So you do feel sorry for them sometimes, but it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. I mean, I'm 50. I still get my feelings. You'll get 1,000 emails that say how great a piece of artwork you did is, and that's that one email, and you're like, this person didn't like my work. And I'll be upset about it for 2 hours, and my friends are like, Fred, what the, everybody does that. It's just normal. Okay,
and then you're thinking of like things to say back to them, like, why you little.
Yeah. But it is, and then when I talk about sharing, when we go back to the question about the publishers, back when I started this and I was really into comics and I wanted to make doujinshi, I wanted to print stuff. The only way to sort of get things to people was you'd make a book and somehow get it to people. The internet introduced the ability to reach pretty much anybody anywhere. I mean, if you weren't here when the internet started, the idea of being able to go to a big website from your computer was queer. It was weird stuff. It really was. And when it comes to what I was able to do is I didn't have to make a comic and try to convince a group of people who run a publishing company. that they should take a chance on publishing my work. I was able to just put it out there and let people decide whether they wanted to read it or not. And I think that when you create stuff, that's why it's a good idea to get stuff out there, because let people in general decide whether they want to see it or not. Okay, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
One thing I always have trouble with pretty much anything I draw, either visual art or actually like this art or comics,
Mm-hmm.
come up something original because I enjoy doing fan art.
Uh-huh.
And something I showed to my mom, she was always like, "Are these your characters or these are fan art characters?
Mm-hmm.
These are fan art characters?" And something that's not explained to her about fan art and stuff,
Yeah.
other art. But my thing is, how do you come up with something original? Because I love to do that, but I don't want to sound but I don't want to be pandering,
Right.
redundant, or just use something that's pretty much been used before.
Yeah.
For me, I noticed to be original is to write about something that you absolutely love. I noticed when I was in Japan and I got a chance to meet several doujinshi artists, and when I talked to them, I thought their whole world revolved around doing art, and it wasn't the art. It was the subject that they're writing in the book that they had. Like one guy, I loved his art, and it was based on Civil War or
Mm-hmm.
some of the feudal Japan kind of stuff. He had a bigger interest in feudal Japan than the whole artwork world. So you see, you're just taking something that was near and dear to you, and that becomes original because you have some say in that subject.
Mm-hmm.
And what's another one? I think One Piece comes to mind. Why it became so popular was because nobody was writing anything about pirates.
Mm.
And that's why it took off, because it wasn't cliche. No one else was doing something on it, and
In Japan, they're actually very good at something becomes popular, and next thing you know, there's all these derivative shows that, and that's not a bad thing, because sometimes those derivative shows end up being really good and creative in their own way. Like, I mean, for myself, I kind of look at it this way: is that if I have an anime or a comic that I like particularly, and usually it's something very specific about that comic, what I try to do is I try to create a character or a situation that gives me the same feeling that comic I like gave me. And from that, you not only kind of replicate the feeling in trying to do that originally without using their characters is tough, but what you're trying to do is get the essence of what made you feel good about that comic in the first place. And then you can even zero in more on what it is you really like. And if you can do that, that's how you can sort of start to create stuff that not only has the original feel that you were looking for, because there's a reason why you like that comic. It's not because the character's name was something specific. It's because of what that world that person created. So what you're trying to do is create that same feeling. And because art sort of is an emotive thing, what you're trying to do is you're trying to create an emotive sense from it. And that's what you're trying to communicate to others. Also to yourself, because when you do a drawing, you look at it, you're going to get a feel out of it, or a story, or some sequence of things that happens. And that's why you read comics in the first place, because somebody created a comic or wrote an anime that sequence did something for you and made you feel something. Try to create something that gives you the same feel, and that's a challenge. And if you can learn to do that, that's a big part of creating. And first of all, there's nothing wrong with fan art. You're just using a structure that was created by other people, somebody else, and you're building on it instead of having to start at the ground floor. And we're all building on things to a certain extent. Even the Civil War stuff, there's a whole genre of history there that you're building a story around. So there's nothing new about this. So, does that help? All right. Okay. And there was another question over here. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm trying to submit things to do color work for comics and stuff. Best way of submitting it.
Best way of submitting to who?
Anyone at this point, I just want probably smaller creators because I don't have.
Okay. So you're interested in coloring specifically. Okay. Well, so what you're trying to do is you're trying to make yourself available for that type of work to help other artists do color work, for instance. I guess there's a number of ways to do that. First of all, is obviously having work that you have done showing what you can do is probably the main thing, and having that in somewhere that's really accessible. As far as submitting it, I've never I'm terrible. I can't work with people. I can only do my own stuff, and it's terrible. It's so I very rarely, I don't take commissions and have people sort of hire me to do stuff. So I've never kind of gone out and sought to be hired to do stuff like that. So I'm not really a good person to give recommendations on that, but I can almost bet that there are places where you can, I know that there's venues where people are looking for, hey, I need somebody to draw this for me, or I'm looking for somebody to color. Because I myself, I'm a pencil artist. I don't color that much. It took me 20 years to get to the point that I could do that type of coloring. Okay, and I mean, hey, it looks okay, but this is not, high-end stuff. So, and often people will do pencil work or pen work or ink work, and especially in American comics, people are used to doing, one person pencils, one person inks, one person does color. So there's definitely a job description and a job area for that. So I wish I had more specific recommendations. Do you know of how that would work better than I do, Bob?
I don't know if they still do. I know if you went to some of the major comic conventions, like in Chicago or San
true.
Diego, they have portfolio reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can talk to editors and you can show them the work, and if they, I know if they really like your work, they'll contact you after the show for follow up on maybe some jobs. I know some of the work I've gotten in video games was because they found my work on DeviantArt and they liked it. And so, always keep your portfolio online updated. Make sure anything you post online has your contact information, a clear signature.
Yep.
It's like, oh, these people are using these fancy signatures and I still can't read their names, so it's
and always,
unfortunate I can't find them online.
Yeah, and always have your work out, and always keep putting stuff up, keep having it available. I would almost suggest that especially if you're trying to show what you can do as far as your coloring work, work. I mean, there's artwork that gets put up that has, that's not colored, and you could say, hey, can I take your piece of work and color it, and then kind of, some people do. Like for instance, if you ask me, can I color your artwork and show it to people? I'm okay with that. There's plenty of people who would be. So probably a good idea to ask, but that sort of stuff you can sort of show some contrast between, hey, if this is how my stuff works when I do this type of artworks, et cetera, et cetera. So.
And on your online galleries, make sure you label yourself as a colorist. Everything you put up, hashtag it coloring colorist. So that way, if somebody out there who's looking for a colorist, they can find you easily.
Okay. I wish we could help more on that one specifically, but yes, ma'am.
What's your favorite mediums?
My favorite medium, pencil for me. Literally. I mean, it's 20 years of doing comics, and I mean, this is the only tool I need. I mean, I think I've made slight adjustments. I'm using, and of course, I have to be fancy. I'm using 0.4 millimeter lead, not 0.5 or 0.3.
There's 0.4.
Yes, there's a 0.4, but they don't sell it here in the U.S.
I use a 0.3.
Yeah, so it's 0.4, and I have to use a specific type of lead. You see, at least with me, when we talk equipment, this is it. I mean, that's the wrong one. Wait a minute. So, I've got to use this is like a graphite lead, and it's not a super polymer like lead, so it actually is a little nicer to work with.
Oh, okay. What
but,
hardness?
I just use HP. That's
Oh.
all I use.
I use H. H is my favorite.
And we all have what we're comfortable with, but the trouble with the graphite stuff as opposed to the polymer stuff, it literally goos up the inside of your pencil. So I have to clean it out on a regular basis. But that's my favorite medium. I also work with Copic markers. I used to do digital. In fact, I had a period of time where I switched over to I was doing digital art and I started drawing digitally. Once I sort of figured out how to make it look much like my pencil art, I did that for about 8 years. And then I got to the point is that I felt like I was missing something. And for me, I decided, I don't know, I kind of like what I was doing in pencil before, so I went back to working in pencil. And, you're going to hear people say, no, you got to do digital, you got to do digital, you got to do digital. And maybe, but if you really feel more comfortable in other mediums, that's okay. So.
Did you hear about the controversy on Copics now?
There's a controversy on Copics? Uh-oh, now what?
Yeah. Something about they're not archival and it'll degrade over time.
Oh, it will degrade over time? Uh-oh. Crap.
Be careful.
But
it blew up on Twitter just a few days ago. I'm like, well,
but
don't
that's
play Copics.
okay. Well, Okay, now I'm depressed. I already worried about my artwork not lasting long enough, so anyway, so. Okay, let's see, what do we got? We'll go in the glasses, and then I'll get you in the front, okay?
What is your process for creating a comic?
Which day of the week and what year are we talking? Because it changes on a regular basis. The process for creating comics for me, and it really does come down, everybody's different. I know my style of creating is very chaotic, just because of the nature of the way I work. If you're able to do it right, being able to sort of plan out your story and then write script through your comic, having a sense of where everything's going to go, and then go in and lay out your panels, and then go in and do your drawings and have some flexibility to change some things. I mean, that's the ideal way of doing it. I sort of go into things with a very sort of loose understanding. I'm not going to say idea. I'm going to say an understanding where I think things are going to go. And I can write till I turn green in the face, but I never get anything out of the writing because that's not how I create. When I create stuff, it's by drawing. So usually the comic is starting to come together as I'm trying to draw it. So I'll sketch things, and from that will the things like the dialogue and what's going to happen, and I'll have a sense of where things might go, and I'll draw it out, and I'm struggling with it. It's not working, and then I'll draw it a little bit, and the next thing I know, a character's expression will reflect something I hadn't thought of before, and it's like, oh, so that's how she's going to react to that. And then the next thing I know, it changes the whole comic because it changes the direction, because that character showed me in that drawing that I did something different than I was originally thinking. So that kind of flexibility is maddening. It's very hard to work with anybody else if you do that, because there's no ability to, the planning changes happen because I'm willing to, take the hit from not sure where things are going. I think, a good process is being able to go in, having a good understanding of what you want the comic to be. As always, though, you're still pulling stuff out of the air to try to figure out what it's going to be. And a lot of times it doesn't feel like it starts to come together until you're sort of in the middle of it. So, and also if you're doing the comic and if you're struggling with it and it's really not working, and I mean really not working, it's a good idea to step back and look at it and think, maybe I need to try a different approach. Maybe something the opposite of what I was thinking, or something drastically different. And don't be afraid to challenge yourself, because if you just decide what something's going to happen at the beginning and refuse to change it, you may be forcing things to happen that are not believable. And if you don't believe it, the reader's not going to believe it. So sometimes when you let insane things happen because your character's decided as such, which they're going to do, it's good to go with those feelings. So have some flexibility in what you're doing. This would be my advice. So I don't know.
I don't do comics.
I don't think
I hate doing comics.
Yeah.
I just don't like piecing them together. I like.
Smart man.
I'm a more animator guy, so everything's got to be in that video format kind of thing.
Well, and I'd say too that there are people who think in terms, comics, and they think in terms of how the frames work and how they communicate, and you're really thinking about that. I'm sort of more of a cinematic perspective. If you really break down my comics, each frame is like a frame out of a video still. I tend to think, and that's how I tend to frame out everything. Sure, the frames are smaller and larger, and there are different things, but at the same time, as far as progression goes, they're thinking in terms of how each frame is going to say something or do something. And I'd say that Miyazaki sort of did that with Nausicaa Valley of the Wind. If you think of his comics, that's sort of exactly how he did it. And I'm not saying that, I'm saying that I do very similar, not because I'm trying to put myself in the same shoes, because I'm not. But if you think about him, he totally thinks in terms of movies and cinema. So it made sense, and it worked. So, and then, finishing the comic, that's the hardest part sometimes, is actually getting it to the point that you're happy with it. And in the end, I really advise that you're the main person that you're producing this comic for is for yourself, and you've got to feel like there's something right about it. If it doesn't feel right, go back, stop. Don't be afraid to do that, because if it doesn't make you happy, it's not going to make other people happy.
Yeah. One I could recommend is start doing like a short stories at first.
Yes.
Because then it gives you a sense of, you're achieving something, you're reaching goals, you're getting something done, and then, there are some kids I've come across, they have this epic storyline that they're working on, but, they haven't started on page 1 yet. And So,
And sometimes, yeah, you can. What can happen with that is that you can dive in and you've done 5 or 6 pages of build up, and everybody's like, you know, you can do an enormous amount of build up and reaching a point in 4 or 5 frames if you really try. If you allow yourself to think, oh, I've got to start when the universe was born, and then how humanity evolved, and I mean, you start going through everything, you know, you're going to lose people. So you got to sort of be able to get right into the meat of it, and not be afraid to cut stuff out. That's the hardest thing. But like I said, I don't blame you for not wanting to do comics. I don't know why I do comics. I think of it, it's a terrible thing to do. So if you're interested in doing comics, don't. Okay, it's not fun. Okay, that should kill any more questions. Yes, you had a.
My original question was your storyboard process, but you already answered that. So
Yeah.
my other question would be, what's your favorite like type of character to draw? Like, do you have a favorite like usual one? Like if you're just like doodling because you're bored, is there like one that you like automatically go to, or do you just draw like what's around you?
Well, I can tell you. You ever seen that meme with the guy and the girl's going, and he's like looking back at this other chick walking. You know that meme? You know, they actually did this one. It's like, you know, artist, you know, project you're working on, new random idea. You know, I mean, you're constantly being distracted by random ideas. And you know what I say to that is that I've actually gone off and done side drawings, side illustrations. I mean, I've created entire worlds off to the side that actually have had a good impact on the main storyline because it enables you to think freely and think outside of the box of what you're doing. Sometimes it's good to clear your head that way. I mean, like I said, I draw by sketching. So, I mean, I'll start with, you know, I'll get little sketches of things that'll inspire things one way or the other, and sometimes the sketches are pretty dead, and sometimes, you know, the sketch will be nothing more than that, and it probably looks like a blank piece of paper from back there, but there's a few lines on there,
yeah,
and I actually know what comic that was from. So, you know, it's, you know, the storyboarding process can be a good one, because, you know, that's what it ends up being sometimes, is that you're trying to tell a story, it happens in sequence, and doing little sketches of it is probably a good idea if you can do it. And, you know, especially, you know, I can't sit down and write it out, because writing the words I can't register the words as anything important. So the drawings have a big impact on it. But then you're starting to think, well, where do I put the dialogue? And I don't know about you, but when I'm drawing and then I write words and I go back and look at those words later, I can't read them because it's scribbles, you know. So, you know, because it's trying to get at what's going on in here, which is not so easy. You know, it really is.
that was
So.
another thing that bugged me about comics is you had to make room for the words too. It's like, oh my god.
Oh, the hell with the
this would
words.
not be a problem in animation.
I totally ignore the words until I get to laying it out. And then I'm like, you know, that's why I actually, on my Patreon, I actually have the ability, if you're like a $5 patron, you can actually see the comic without the dialogue. Or is it the time? I can't remember. So you can see most of the artwork that I drew that is totally covered up. And it's insane. So, I mean, it's all the time. I've got artwork that I've drawn and spent all this time finishing. And then I cover it up with word bubbles. Because I'm an idiot, because I can't seem to get that through my head, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So if you have these problems, don't feel bad. There are people out here like myself who've never gotten better because we're stupid, but we still do it, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, okay, and question back.
What would you say the differences are in publishing webcomics versus like physical comics?
What's the difference, or?
Like, what's it like? Yeah, like pros and cons.
Pros and cons? I would say that the main thing about making a comic, what's the main goal of making a comic or making artwork? What do you want to do? You want to get it in front of people to read, see, consume in that way. Hopefully via they pay you a little bit at some point along the way. Somebody does. I mean, but ideally, mainly you're just trying to you're making something to communicate something to people, and you'd like to get it in front of people. It used to be publishing was kind of the only option because publishers print a number of books. Books end up in lots of people's hands, and that's how they get across. With the internet, you can reach people directly if they're stupid enough to download what you put up. You know, and of course, people finding it is not so easy. But you know, when it comes to publishers, no publisher is going to come along and say, "Wow, I think this person's got potential," make you a millionaire, and set you up so that you're going to go sky high. Nobody's going to make it happen for you. You have to do it yourself, even if they're helping you. you're still really the one doing it all, because they can't do it without you. But they're not going to do it for you, I guess is the main thing. So a publisher can help you reach an audience that you may not be able to reach on your own. So publishers definitely can work out well for you. But a publisher, you got to remember, they're doing it because they need to support their own company and they need to make money on the books, and they're not a charity. So if they're working with you, they kind of are hoping to be able to make some money off of it. When it comes to doing things yourself or online on the web, I mean, there's things like webtoons, and what's the other one? There's Line Webcomics, and there's a number of sites, aggregator sites, where and some of these, if you can publish your comics and if you get enough people that are viewing them, that can result in some, you can actually earn some funds from that because of viewership and other things. People can, if you have a Patreon like I do, people pay a little bit a month every month to help support the production of the comic. And not only do I still offer the comic for free for people to read, because I like people to be able to read it that way, but the people who support the Patreon get a little bit extra. They get to see the high-res stuff. So, I mean, if you're printing, I like being able to put pages up and have people see it all the time. I love that. I like being able to do that. If you're printing, and this was a problem back when Tokyo Pop was working with all the original English language comics, and what they were getting is there were people who had never done a book before, or never done a long comic before, and they were making them do an entire book's worth of comics. And that was just so hard on people because they really had no idea whether their comic worked or not. And they were doing an entire book. Even in Japan, you were getting 16-page releases where you at least were getting some feedback and some understanding of how your stuff was working. So it's much better to start getting stuff out there to a certain point. Having to wait until it comes out as a publisher might prefer, like for instance, if I was to do another book, and if I was to do like a 60-page book or something, and I never shared it, and the first place and the only place you could see it is through a Dark Horse publication, Dark Horse would love that because people would buy it just to see that, and that's great. But at the same time, it would be a long time of work that nobody would see for a year's worth of work for me probably, and I wouldn't have any feedback. Nobody know what I'm doing. And like I said, I like the social nature of putting stuff online. So, I think
if you're also thinking about self-publishing, there's also it costs a lot of money to self-publish.
Right.
Plus, you got to think about storage. Then you got to think about, how am I going to get these books to people? Are you going to take them to conventions? Are you going to try to sell them online? And to me, I'm the same. I prefer the internet method because there are always people who want to be entertained on the internet, and if you can provide that on a daily, weekly basis, you will always have a fan base coming every week, and then you can make money through these other sites that can produce shirts for you. They can stickers, and then now you have Amazon. I guess Amazon, you can print a book through Amazon, and you don't have to store it anywhere. Because
you can do comics. You can have release comics on Kindle. There's a lot of different ways of doing stuff. Now, guarantee each time you work with a company, release something, they get a cut of things, and you get a much smaller cut. But there are ways to work with these things that, if you use your head and you get any sort of readership, you learn what works best for you, because it's self-publishing. There's nothing worse than if you spend a lot of money on distribution, because basically you're spending money on distribution of your artwork to people. Internet is the most efficient way of getting things to people you can possibly think of. Now, as far as being successfully able to market this through internet media, through there's Facebook, Instagram, through Reddit, through the webtoons, there's lots. I'm not very good at it, to be honest. People have always come to me. I'm spoiled, but I've never been very good at promoting it, so I don't really know how to promote it. And also, people who aggressively promote their stuff, you got to be careful, because that sort of is a turnoff too, because people are like, why is this guy pushing me so hard to read his comic? So there's a fine line there. But does that anything more specific about that question, or in the contrast, or? I love working with my publisher, and it's helped me reach. And also, I've had a lot of people who read the comic all online, but they actually prefer the books, so they'll wait for the books. So some people don't like to read stuff online as much as they'd rather have a book. So, but you know, it all depends on what you're most comfortable with releasing. So, okay, yes,
How do you navigate pricing your work?
huh?
How do you navigate pricing your work?
Well,
Like if you want to have a booth or something, you kind of have to navigate like
Yeah,
what
well-
kind of price people are willing to pay, but how am I going to respect my time that went into
Okay.
this?
Well, what helps is if you start with the idea that everything you do is worth nothing, it makes it easier to. And no, this does not work for everybody. This is just the way I think. No, a lot of it comes from experience and also looking at what other people are doing and having a sense of, you know, don't undervalue your work, and also don't really listen to. I guess one big thing would be, you know, if you are selling stuff and people are not complaining about it, you know, that's great. You know, I mean, because and people who do complain about it, especially like, you know, it's like, you know, it's like, what, you want to charge me $20 for a drawing? Isn't that a little bit much? That person's not really interested in your artwork. You know, they just want to get something cheap. You know, you know, take into mind how much time you put into it. I mean, I sell drawings for a couple $100 a pop for a number of them, but they're always ones that I've put a day's worth of work into or more, and also sometimes it's just one that came out particularly well, and you know, the thing is I make it available for a certain amount of money, and if nobody's interested in paying for that, it doesn't sell. You know, whereas I've put up drawings before, they've been color drawings, and I put like 3 or 4 days worth of work into it. I put it up for $250. 3 hours later, it's gone. So that's nice, you know, and you sort of, you know, if you do it enough, you get a sense of it. But it's also nice to be able to offer. The nice thing is that, you know, you can offer prints for sale, which, you know, maybe $10 or something like that. You can offer those for a lot less, so somebody can buy something of yours without having to spend a lot of money. So you can have different levels of things. And like with the Patreon, I mean, I've got a $1 level, and, you know, that's inexpensive, and you're supporting it, and it's not too bad, you know. And you can offer goods all across. You know, these days you've got Teespring, you've got all these different, you know, Redbubble, and I mean, all these different places where you can do products, T-shirts, print on demand, all this other stuff, and have stores where you can put your artwork on stuff. And it's you know, and the nice thing is that you can do this, and if no one ever buys one of your shirts, you're not out any money. See, when I started doing this, they didn't have stuff like this. You know, Cafe Press was kind of new back when I started, and so when we started selling a certain number of T-shirts and people were wanting these things, we had to have a warehouse. I had to like buy all the T-shirts up front. I had to invest in place. It was expensive to try to run that kind of an operation, but the comic itself didn't make any money on its own because I was still doing that for free. It was just through sales through the store, and I spent more time managing the store and trying to keep things going that way than I did doing art, and this kind of sucked. I mean, today you don't have to do that. You can literally, people are willing to support you to draw and to do work, you know, and it's worth taking advantage of that if you can. Okay. Well,
For me, it was different because when it came to the portraits, I didn't know how much to price. And I gave myself a rule that when I did the portraits, I wanted to draw it under a certain time limit. Like, I don't want to go over an hour. I try to keep it within 30, 40 minutes. And I thought maybe $30 for pencil sketch. And then I used to have this on DeviantArt, and I got hell for that. People were like, "That's way too much for a pencil sketch," and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it was getting so frustrating that I said, "Okay, screw it. I'm going to go to eBay." So when I posted on eBay, I'm posting not just a sketch. I'm saying this is my time. I'm willing to give you for me to draw your portrait. And what was so amazing is like I was getting $100 offers, $200 offers. I think the highest I've ever gotten was $300 for a portrait. And here I'm like, wow! I thought charging $34 was too little, or too much, and now my eBay is like my wingman.
Yeah.
So like when people say, you know, hey, how much you charge for a sketch? I was like, go to my eBay and bid on the time for my next opening. And so that's how I figured out how much I should charge.
Yeah.
And if I stop doing eBay, now I know how much I can say, you know, this is how much I'm I can only offer, I can't go lower because then it's an insult to the people who offered
Yeah,
that much
that's
beforehand.
the other thing to
You
consider,
never want to
too.
go back
Right.
lower to, otherwise it makes you look bad.
Yep.
People think that you're not worth any more than,
Yeah.
but
And, you know, and
it's really, really, you know,
emotions come into it too. I don't know, people probably figured that out, but when that's the thing about artwork. You're selling something that is part of something that you've created, and you'd like people to purchase this artwork or purchase this piece. And if nobody is buying it at a certain price, you feel like, oh, I need to discount it. I need to drop the price to something much cheaper. And then nobody buys. And then somebody says, oh, that's not worth it. I'll give you, I'll trade you this candy bar for it. And it's just like, okay, and it can feel very disheartening, for that. And that's why you got to be a little careful with it and try to keep nobody feels their work is worthless more than I do, but at the same time, it is about kind of having an understanding what other people think of it, and having respect for what people might think of the work in general. So don't just discount your work entirely, because that's never a good thing. Even if you in here feel like it isn't worth anything, it doesn't mean that you should tell actually you can tell other people, but when it comes to, you don't just give it away, because people that's people taking advantage of you. So.
and plus it could be the timing,
Yeah.
like before December, that's when I get the most
Yeah.
offers for but January, nobody's, they're saving money because they go, wow, look how much I spent on Christmas gifts. So, don't let,
Look around, look at the people around you. People are similar to yourself. People have, and just kind of take a look and get a feel for things. And trust me, companies do that. They look at the rest of the market and to see what they can sell their books for. Because if they put out a product and it's way cheaper than everybody else, that kind of screws them, because they could be making a lot more money if it was much closer to what everybody else is charging for that product. So having an understanding of the market, it makes sense to do. So, okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Oh.
Dealing with artist block, how do you deal with it? Do you deal with it?
dealing with artist block.
I live in perpetual artist block.
You think he's kidding? He's not.
No, I mean, how 5?
One of my
Okay.
favorite things to do is, Pixiv, the Japanese DeviantArt. There are so many talented people on there, and I created my own account there. And what I did, I started favoriting some of those good artists on there. So one way I noticed when I look at some of their artwork, it would get my creative juices going. So I thought, hey, that's like kind of a natural button that, if I use that to push my button, create a button, then I should, every morning I would go to Pixiv and just go, take a stroll through there, and it just gets the creativity going.
That's really interesting, because nothing depresses me more than looking at other people's art and seeing just how crappy I am compared to where I wish I was. So that cautionary, you got to be careful with that. So, but at the same time, anybody can be creative during that time when you've got a burst of ideas and you can do it. When you have to draw something and it's part of your job, man, it can be hard. There are times. There's so many ways to approach it, but in the end, sometimes pushing yourself real hard and actually just ramming through. I kind of consider myself to be a brute force artist. I don't have any confidence when I sit down that I'm actually going to be able to draw anything worthwhile. I just do not. I mean, I know I can, but mentally I don't think I can. So what I do is I just push forward with it, and it starts to come together at some point. And at some point, when it starts to look like a real drawing, then I'm like, yeah, okay, this is better. But I don't have any confidence. It's 20 years. I still don't have confidence that I'm going to be able to draw what I think I'm going to be able to draw. And I think it's a little unusual, maybe because I'm a little neurotic on some things, but it can be overcome, and sometimes just pushing yourself on it, for a while, it'll help you break through a little bit. And that's not easy. That is so, because, nothing depresses you more than pushing yourself and still doing crappy. Okay, now I'm proving I suck,
Yeah, those times when you feel like you're just phoning it in. I'm like, oh my God, I hope people don't notice it's just phoning it in.
Yeah, and I'll do it like I do it on Twitch. I do it live, and I'll complain about something, and they're like, "It looks fine." I'm like, "No, it's crap. It's garbage. It looks awful. I'm gonna throw it all away. I'm gonna burn my office down.
Somebody
Maybe I better not do that. My wife might not like that. Stuff like that."
Somebody gave me, they told me, I was talking about like, oh, I hate putting up my worst work. And they go, oh, you should never feel that way because your worst work is probably far better than what somebody else can do.
You ever seen I've seen some comic artists, webcomic artists who've done this. They've started a webcomic and people get to read it and they're doing it. And then they're like, I got to go back and I'm going to redo everything I started from. I've seen people do that. And then they go back and they literally have to redo it. And it's like, don't do that. Whatever you did in the past is yours. Own it. Live with it. It's fine. Trust me. I look back when Kodansha approached me about doing Mega Tokyo Volume 1 in Japan. I literally cringed at the idea of doing the first book. I'm like, can't we start with the third book? But no, they kind of wanted to start. Cause I'm like, really? So I do all this work, and I get to the point that I'm going to be published in Japan, and they're going to do the crap I did first. And it was so... But at the same time, you got to own it. It's yours, and just accept it for what it is. And don't worry about it, because you're going to be more critical of it than anyone else is. Okay, so we're probably real short on time here. We got probably time for one last question. She said 5 minutes, so I don't even know. Where are we at? You got?
I think we got one more here.
Okay, we'll do one more, and then we're out of here.
What's your favorite animation that you've currently done or done in the past that you're most proud of?
I love my Mandalorian animations that I worked on lately. I did these like little. I just got on TikTok because somebody said somebody was stealing my artwork on there, so I got on there, and then I just started scrolling through some of the videos.
Yeah.
And there's one that popped up that the Mandalorian was just coming out, and I thought, wow, this would make a funny Mandalorian spoof. And so I started making these little Mandalorian, half-second animations. And they're a lot of fun. I love them. They're great. Anyone watch Mandalorian?
Yeah, good stuff. I actually animated something once. It was Fearbots parading past Largo. It was comic 137. I thought since it was 1337, which is lead, I thought it should be really cool. So it's this big long comic, and at the bottom, the Fearbots are actually moving and marching forward. And that was not easy.
Yeah.
When you don't animate on a regular basis, it's not easy to do it. So.
Did you
Okay.
have this? I think he's got a little favorite. Did you want to say something? No? Okay.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for coming. We appreciate you coming. Hopefully that kind of fulfilled some things for you. So thank you.
So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tomas. All right. And now I get to turn this off, and I have no idea what... Okay. Bye, guys. All right. Are you sure? Yes, I want to end the stream.